We are now called together, called by bell and bird, called by oak leaf and pine needle, called by the beat of our hearts, to join again the living tradition we share, to answer again the call to wisdom, and to respond to love. Today, with the bell ringing from Big Ben in London, and the nightingales singing in Africa and Europe, let us remember the third and fourth of our tradition's sources. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life, and Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves.
In French, the response is "et aussi avec toi." Que la paix soit avec vous. Please stand and pass the peace to those around you, and remain standing for our first hymn. Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, I'm Susan Bridgeford, your celebrant this morning.
I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister of this congregation.
Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Des Moines, and a special welcome to our visitors. For those of you on Zoom, thanks for tuning in, and please be sure your mic is muted. If you are here with children, there is childcare, or feel free to keep them seated with you, or utilize our play area in the back.
We open this gathering with an acknowledgement of the lands, the waters, plants, and animals, human and otherwise, whose being is bound up with our own in mutual dependence, and whose ghosts are among us here. 13,000 years ago, the first humans arrived here, starting with Clovis culture, and then the Folsom and Dalton. 3,000 years ago, the Woodlands culture was beginning its predominance in the region. From 200 to 500 CE, the Hopewell tradition was a dominant influence on the peoples here. By 1300, the Oneata were here. The Iowa arrived in the 16th century, followed by the Sauk and Meskwaki, migrating from the Great Lakes areas from which European incursion pushed them out. Non-human animals, now extinct or in much diminished numbers, have also been here. These include the least tern, large flocks of which once migrated through these lands. This location's past calls to us, occupying it in the present, to join the work of education and healing for all species.
And bring awareness also to our current location in the rhythms of nature. Today is the 10th Sunday of winter, 3 more to go until spring. The moon is waning crescent and will be new on Thursday. Our Muslim friends are preparing for Ramadan, which begins on Friday. And on the Christian calendar, Lent begins with Ash Wednesday on March 5th. For newcomers to our congregation who may be curious to learn a little more about us, every first Sunday of the month, we have a curiosity conversation after the service. The next one will be on Sunday, March 2nd, just after the service in the back of this room.
This year's curriculum for spiritual growth and learning is sketched in our thematic ministry flyer available on the back table and this front shelf. Our theme for February is borders and boundaries. For March, it will be dignity. Connection circles explore that theme. Copies of the packet for our connection circles are available in a basket just outside the doors in the back. And now we light our chalice.
The living tradition we share draws from many sources. Today, we dedicate our chalice to the 3rd and 4th sources, wisdom from the world's religions which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life, and Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors and ourselves, as ourselves. Please enjoy in the responsive chalice lighting from Edward Everett Hale on the screen. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do.
We are a people of covenant, not of creed. We express our covenant in our denomination's bylaws, our bond of union, our mission, and our relational covenant. Today, please join me in affirming our congregation's bond of union. We covenant to associate ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, hoping thereby to prove helpful one to another and to promote truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
For our responsive reading, please respond with the words in yellow italic. I call that church is free, which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence.
As sustaining and transforming power, not made with human hands.
It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority.
This covenant is the charter and responsibility and joy of worship in the face of death as well as of life.
I call that church free, which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship.
That protects and nourishes their integrity.
Thank you.
That yearns to belong to the Church Universal.
It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through from rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship.
It is a pilgrim church, a servant church, on an adventure of the Spirit.
The goal is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for liberty and prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing.
It aims to find unity and diversity under the promptings of the Spirit that floweth where it listeth and maketh all things new.
Today's story is Speak Up, Molly Lou Mellon by Patty Lovelow. I'm Molly Lou Mellon, and I'm tiny, but I've got a big, deep down heart. My mom always told me, be true to yourself, and so I did.
Molly Lou, remember always to be true to yourself. You're special, just as you are.
I tried to do the right things in my life. It didn't always work out, but my mom always told me,
take responsibility for the things you do, good or bad.
So I did. I had friends of all shapes, sizes, opinions, and ideas, and my mom always said,
accept people for who they are and listen to their ideas, even if they're different from yours.
So I did. I've got a loud voice. I chat, jabber, and gab with my friends all the time, and my mom always told me,
you have a strong voice. Use it to speak up for anyone who needs your help.
So I did. In the fall, I started school again with my big yellow backpack and my toothy smile, and I sat with Ronald and Gertie in the front row. Between us sat Bettina Bunklehead.
Molly Lou and Ronald, kissy kissy, boyfriend and girlfriend.
We are friends. In the winter, I had to project partners with Bettina Bunklehead, and we accidentally painted all over the desk, not on the papers. It was a little fun, but when the teacher asked,
Who did it?
me,
Molly Lou, you'll have to clean up the desks during recess.
I spent recess cleaning the desk while Bettina played outside, but I wasn't upset for long. I had my own fun swabbing the desk. In the spring, a new boy named Garvin Grape started school. He was small, wore glasses, and his ears stuck out. He gave a big speech about gravity in front of class.
So gravity is the force that pulls things towards the center of the earth. It keeps everything from floating away.
Big deal.
Yes, gravity is a big deal. Nice speech, Garvin. On the first day of summer, Bettina Bunklehead stuck her foot out and tripped Garvin Grape. His glasses went flying, and Bettina laughed.
Smarty pants, looks like gravity got ya.
You must never do anything like that again to my friend. Friends stand up for one another.
Well,
You hurt him, and it's not okay. We all deserve respect. Now apologize.
That's right. We're all friends here. We stick together.
And so even Bettina Bunklehead became friends with me and my buddies. At this time, we're going to sing the kiddos out to children's benediction. So if all the youth could join our friends in the back, we're going to walk down to classes for the remainder of service.
My name is James Williams.
And I'm Chrissy Williams. While we've only been members here for a few years, we discovered the UU Church in Austin, Texas, a few years before our son was born. At the time, we were looking for a new church home as we could no longer reconcile the belief differences we had with our Methodist and Catholic upbringings. We were thrilled to find a non-creedal church that allowed us to develop our own belief systems without judging us by recognizing that we all need support in our faith journey. When a wonderful opportunity presented itself in Iowa for James to lead Iowa's vocational rehabilitation agency, we knew we had to find a local UU church to continue our journey, and we could not be happier that we found this church, as we feel it truly leads with love and has many members that demonstrate that value through their daily actions and belief in each other.
It's a church that recognizes that to support our community and social justice causes, we must also support each other and be a community that reflects the love we want to see in the world. With this in mind, we chose to pledge generously to this church to ensure that our son has a safe, caring community to grow up in that values his differences, appreciates his gifts, and recognizes the value that each of us, no matter how young or old we are, have. We look forward to our family's continued involvement in this church and for our role in ensuring that our church continues to serve as a beacon for our community, particularly in times when it feels like we are powerless to be the change we want to see in the world. This church actually gives us that power. We just need each other to achieve it. As long as our family is here in Des Moines or Iowa, this will be our home. Thank you.
Chapter 7, Miguel Serveto, Part 1. Unitarianism in Europe is rooted in two ideas. One, critique of the doctrine of the Trinity. And that's the idea we are named after. Our tradition stands for the oneness of divinity. Two, critique of religious intolerance. And that's the idea that's more central to what it means to be Unitarian. Our tradition has been one of speaking out for religious liberty. Both of those ideas got a significant boost from the life and work of Miguel Serveto, also known as Michael Servetus. Miguel Serveto was born in 1509, was 8 years old when, 2,000 kilometers away in Wittenberg, Germany, Martin Luther nailed 95 theses to a church door, launching the Protestant Reformation. Serveto was a brilliant student, earned a BA at age 14, an MA at age 15. He eventually became a leading scholar of his time in a number of fields: mathematics, astronomy, meteorology, geography, human anatomy, medicine, pharmacology, jurisprudence, poetry, and Bible studies. In Catholic Spain, Protestant books were strictly banned. Young Miguel might have first had access to forbidden Protestant writings at age 18 when he went to France to study at the University of Toulouse. In 1531, the year he turned 22, Miguel Serveto came out with a book, On the Errors of the Trinity. He argued that Jesus' human nature and Christ's nature came into being at the same time. In other words, that the Son was not co-eternal with the Father. Miguel Serveto was bright and young and cocky, and he seems to have imagined that he would explain to his elders the errors of their thinking, and they would say, "Oh, thank you. Yes, I see I was mistaken." Instead, reaction was rather negative.
Doesn't have it back on. You're invited to call upon the pastoral care team if you are going through any significant transition in your life, just to talk it over. Reach out to us at pastoralcareteam@ucdsm.org. You can always request assistance, volunteer to provide it, or submit a joy or sorrow through the Caring Community page on our website, or by speaking with me or any member of the pastoral care team. We have the following joys and sorrows to share. We extended healing wishes to those recovering from injury and illness, including Susan Seitz, who had rotator cuff surgery this past Monday, and Charlie Johnson, who is recovering from a hip fracture and surgery at Wesley Acres. Charlie would love volunteers to help pass the time. We hold in love those facing a new diagnosis or a long-term condition, including Jim Carty, who is soldiering through a new treatment for his cancer. We extend comfort to those grieving, strength to the caregivers, and solidarity to those whose rights are being attacked. We see you, we value you, we love you, and we are with you. Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all.
Dear Spirit of life and love, we pray so that we might hear our own heart's yearnings, that we might then be guided intentionally by what we express. We live in a wounded world. The plague of dismantling thousands of programs supported by the United States government leaves us stunned for those who worked at jobs that evaporated at a moment's notice, though many had worked years in these positions and had recently gotten stellar evaluations. So many who worked in these jobs fully devoted their lives to their work. Can trust be rebuilt? Our hearts break when we think of the systems and the people that had finally known diversity, equality, inclusion. From science to the protection of the environment, from airline safety to financial oversight, from education to healthcare, from agriculture to hundreds more systems, no part of a country's communal life seems to escape this cruel and destructive hand of a government against itself. Its reckless dismantling of parts of a functioning democracy. Those who worked at USAID included thousands of people skilled in the details of humanitarian work and in cross-cultural friendships. Programs around the globe were forced to shut down, including those that controlled malaria in 24 African nations. A promising decades-old program countering the effects of Agent Orange in Vietnam suddenly ended, leaving people in volatile wastelands. Backup heating systems in schools, hospitals in Ukraine were stopped. Life-saving programs were frozen for 145,000 vulnerable women in Afghanistan in need of safe houses, mental health, counseling, health care, and vocational training. So many around the world are longing for justice for Palestinians, a lasting peace for the people of Gaza and the people of Israel. Always, there are people of courage and conviction living lives of integrity and service. May we be among them. Amen.
May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May we breathe in awareness of every pain and grief and breathe out compassion and comfort. We light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared aloud, one for those shared in writing, and one for those held silently among us. For all of these, we now observe a minute of silence.
Ellen said, "May we breathe in the pain and breathe out compassion." For today's training in compassion, I want to build on that a little bit. Compassion literally means to feel passion with. Passion, in this context, means pain. Compassion is the willingness to feel pain with another, to feel another's pain as one's own. It's impossible to take in the pain of another unless we're able to take in our own pain. Most of us are not so good at accepting our own pain. We prefer to deny it or distract ourselves from it. We are so intent on making our own pain go away that we don't allow ourselves to feel it. We can't take it in. Consequently, we're incapable of feeling another's pain, and so we're incapable of actual compassion, although we may think we are quite compassionate. Real, full compassion requires training your heart to do what it usually does not want to do, to go toward rather than away from what's painful and difficult in your own life. Second, it requires realizing that your own suffering and the suffering of others are not different. When you discover that this is so, you see that when you are willing to really take in your suffering, you find within that very suffering the suffering of others. And when you're able to truly take in the suffering of another, you find within it your own human pain. Being willing to receive pain, we come to understand that that's the only way to open our hearts to love, to send and receive compassion. Start by breathing in the openness of mind that you can feel in the clarity and strength of the inhale. One good inhale. And then exhale, letting go completely and merging with openness of mind so that there is nothing else present but that. When you're ready, breathe in again, breathing in your own suffering. Let compassion ride on your breath. As you inhale, take in your own pain and the suffering. With practice, you can do it. Visualize the pain and suffering as a dark, sticky substance or smoke or some kind of goo that you're breathing in, taking into your body. This is receiving. And then breathe out. In exhaling, we transform the goo, the suffering, the pain, into lightness, ease, peacefulness that comes out of our nostrils and all the pores of our body as a light, sweet mist. This is sending. You are sending healing light to yourself and to many others.
For our responsive invocation, please respond with the words in yellow italic. No, it would be the offering. I beg your pardon. I thought I'd been there. We come now to the offering, recalling again the third and fourth sources of the living tradition we share. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life, and Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. In the spirit of gratitude, we mention 3 items from our gratitude board in Griffin Hall. Thank you, Laura Berardi, for your kind caring for people and your commitment to this church. Thank you, Lynn George, pillar of our church, leading women around the table and Unity Circle, organizing memorial services, and always contributing with unwavering kindness and generosity. Also, she makes great cookies. Thank you, Sally Beckholt, involved with Amos, stewardship, coming of age, and more, with heart and soul. The morning offering, then, is gratefully given and gratefully received.
Many of us, I know, have a conflicted relationship with the Bible. That anthology of 66 books in the Protestant Bible, or 73 in the Catholic Bible, or 76 in the Orthodox Bible. And yet, this particular anthology of old writings, any of those three, is powerful and hugely popular. Bibles have always sold well in this country. You might think everyone in the U.S. has long since had one by now, and yet sales have not only continued at a brisk clip, with 9.7 million Bibles sold in the U.S. in 2019, but sales climbed to 14.2 million in 2023. And then, in the first 10 months of 2024, sales were up another 22% over the first 10 months of the year before. But buying Bibles doesn't mean people know their Bible very well. Time magazine observed in a 2007 cover story that only half of U.S. adults could name one of the four Gospels. Fewer than half could identify Genesis as the Bible's first book. I like to think that Unitarian Universalists could do better than that, but I don't have the data. A Gallup and Castelli survey concluded Americans revere the Bible, but by and large they don't read it. Christianity Today wagged, Americans love their Bibles, so much so that they keep them in pristine, unopened condition. For many, apparently, the Bible is a sort of talisman, an object to possess as a symbol of tribal loyalty, not a text to study, to know, and to wrestle with. Or, and this may be part of what's going on with the recent boom in Bible sales, as more and more people are growing up unchurched, what they've heard of the Bible makes it seem like some mysterious source of truth, and in these deeply uncertain times, they get curious to take a look. But without a community and tradition to provide a context of meaning, without background on how the texts came to be written and how those particular texts and not others came to be canonized, they aren't likely to get much from their attempts to read it. But if we do engage the text and also the context, engaging the various interpretive possibilities in open discussion, the stories and the poetry offer us touchstones and wisdom as we seek to make sense of our lives and our world. 2 weeks ago, I talked about the book of Ruth as offering us a helpful inspiration to cross borders and make connections. I've spoken of the loaves and fishes story from the Christian Testament, and at Christmas we look at 2 different Christmas stories, and last Easter we looked at the 4 different Easter stories. There's a lot more to glean from this rich and influential anthology. In fact, I will be offering a class starting next Saturday, March 1st at 2 o'clock in the Mary Safford space in the back of this room. We will have 4 Saturday sessions, March 1st and March 8th, and then we'll skip to April 5th and April 12th. We'll be discussing and reading this book, Understanding the Bible, An Introduction for Skeptics, Seekers, and Religious Liberals by John Burens. Burens is a Unitarian Universalist minister. He was president of the UUA from 1993 to 2001. So let's plunge in and expand our appreciation and understanding of how to use this resource for understanding our own world. Get the book. Join me for the class. First, though, where does this notion of God itself come from? There are lots of theories. Here's mine. Our brains do their best to cope with this world in which we find ourselves. They rely heavily on predicting what's going to happen. Psychology researchers have been learning more and more clearly that the brain is not best understood as a stimulus response mechanism, waiting for some stimulus and then responding. That would be too inefficient, and often there wouldn't be enough time to figure out much of a response. Rather, our brains give a lot of energy to anticipating events. They plan in advance. They are prediction machines. And as the infant grows into the toddler, it begins to form concepts of belief and desire. People believe things, and people want things. This turns out to be tremendously useful in predicting how people, the most important features of our world, will behave, which allows us to coordinate our behavior with theirs. Apparently, conceiving other people's beliefs and desires comes first, and only later do we apply the process to ourselves and form a conception that we ourselves believe certain things and desire certain things. Beliefs and desires are a fiction. We might someday be able to make a complete map of someone's brain. It's 100 billion neurons firing across 100 trillion synapses, and to know just which neurotransmitters are passing along which of those synapses at what rate. But nowhere in all of that will we find such a thing as a belief or a desire. And yet these are indispensable fictions for giving us a rough and ready way to predict and get along with other people and ourselves. There is no other practical way to understand each other. We are made to relate to others as believing and wanting. We can't avoid it. We can, with training, avoid relating to the universe as a whole as having beliefs and desires, though we can't get along without imagining that people have beliefs and desires. We can get along passably without imagining the universe has beliefs and desires. We can do it, but I don't recommend it. If you are a physicist at work, or if you're reading an explanation of what physicists have concluded, you need to set aside any conception of the universe believing or desiring. But even the physicist gets off work at some point, and the exercise of imagining that the universe itself knows things and wants things is a helpful exercise for making us feel at home in this universe. We feel at home with people by relating to them as believing and desiring. Likewise, it helps us feel at home in this universe by relating to the world as if it believed and desired. We explore our place in the order of things by asking ourselves what the universe seems to believe about us and what it seems to want from us. Imagining the universe as a person, an entity that knows things and wants things, that has feelings like love and anger. It's a construct that can be helpful in pulling our whole humanity together, not just the logical left brain. And by engaging with that construct, playing with it, wrestling with it, it can put us into relationship with our world, with nature, or at least can help us cope with it. And so we come to God of the Hebrew Bible, the God of the Hebrew people. And probably every people have done, the Hebrews imagined the universe as having beliefs and desires. And the agents of those beliefs and desires are the gods, or as Hebrews came to conceive, the one God. The Hebrew God has some powerful positives. In the Exodus story, aka Yahweh and Moses' excellent adventure, Yahweh is liberation. He is sustenance, strength to rebel against oppression. Yahweh is covenant, the power of people to come together to be in community, to walk in a shared way of life aimed at transformation and healing and the realization of human potential to have and live in beloved community. But the Hebrew God is rather bipolar. Life itself is rather bipolar. The God of the Hebrew Bible swings between dishing out unearned grace and unearned wrath. And life does include a lot of pleasantness and unpleasantness that we didn't deserve or earn. The Bible, it's a lot. And there are so many fascinating stories in it and about how it came to be and what it might mean. I'm not going to try today to articulate overall the message of Buren's Understanding the Bible. We'll do that in the class starting Saturday. Nor will I make a general point about uses of the Bible. Instead, after the interlude, I'm going to take just one example of the way God is characterized. The hardest example. God at God's worst. The abusive God who appears most harshly in some of the books of the prophets. we'll see if even the parts of the Bible that are most likely to turn you off of the Bible entirely, if even those parts may have some use for us today. It will be difficult. And if in the end you decide that's a bridge too far for you to find any use for, I won't blame you. But let's give it a try and we'll see. And so for our interlude, perhaps something thunderous? The God of the Hebrew Bible is sometimes angry and punitive toward his people. Sometimes in life, it feels like the world is punishing you. The God of the Hebrew Bible is sometimes abusive. It's the prophets that express this abuse: Hosea, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah. These imaginative street preachers described for their listeners a universe that fits the profile of what we know about how abusers behave, casting Yahweh as the abusive boyfriend or husband with Israel as the girlfriend or wife. This description so resonated with the people of Israel that they made these descriptions scripture. My first semester of divinity school, every week on Thursday, I was in Old Testament class for 3 hours in the morning. And then I had pastoral care class for 3 hours in the afternoon. In the pastoral care class, we got to a unit on battering and abuse, how to recognize the signs of an abusive relationship, how that abusive dynamic works. And then in the Old Testament class, we kept talking about this Yahweh character who fit the profile of an abuser that I was learning about in pastoral care. Here are some of the aspects of the profile that we learned. Smashing things, like maybe Sodom and Gomorrah. Destroying her property, harming pets, like demanding animal sacrifices or perhaps the flood. Acting invincible, well, yeah. Putting her down, calling her names, humiliating her, making her feel guilty. Yahweh does all of those things to Israel. Unreasonable demands or expectations. Thou shalt not covet seems a rather unreasonable demand. Limiting her outside involvement, like when Yahweh commands, have no relations with the other people in the land. Embarrassing her in front of others, using the children to relay messages, threatening to take the children away, as in Ezekiel, your survivors shall fall by the sword. Here's one, using religion to control her. Degrading her about her relationships, abusing the children, treating her like a servant, that fits. Making all the rules, like pretty much the entire book of Leviticus. This Yahweh has serious power and control issues. Our pastoral care text said, extreme jealousy and accusations of infidelity characterize most men who batter. Yahweh is famously jealous, proclaiming in Exodus, I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. And in such books as Hosea, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah, Yahweh repeatedly levels accusations of infidelity at Israel. Israel's unfaithfulness is described as sexual unfaithfulness and promiscuity. The accusations, the threats of public shaming in Hosea, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah are in the Bible. And those parts of the Bible are more graphic than I feel comfortable sharing with you out loud in a worship service. The abuse cycle, as counselors now recognize, includes episodes of tender seduction, honeymooning her, periodically recurring between the episodes of violence. And both phases, the manipulating tenderness and the dominating humiliation, are designed to assert and reinforce the abuser's power and control. And here too, Yahweh fits the profile. Hosea describes how Yahweh will humiliate Israel. And then Hosea continues in a passage I will share. Therefore, I will now allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And there I will give her her vineyards and make the valley Achor a door of hope. There she shall respond as in the days of her youth, as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt. Honeymooning, it's called, and it's a tactic of abusers. For a long time, the official Christian line on all of this was that God's acts were a fair punishment for Israel's sins. As our understanding of the nature of abusive relationships has grown, and we use that understanding to help us interpret the Bible, more and more people, including more and more Christians, are now saying there's not enough sin in the world to justify that much punishment. Jewish scholar David Blumenthal, in a book entitled Facing the Abusing God, writes, abusive behavior is abusive. It is inexcusable in all circumstances. What is true of abusive behavior by humans is true of abusive behavior by God. When God acts abusively, we are the victims and we are innocent. When God acts abusively, we are the hurt party and we are not responsible for God's abuse. Our sins, and we are always sinful, are in no proportion whatsoever to the punishment meted out to us. Furthermore, the reasons for God's actions are irrelevant. God's motives are not the issue. Abuse is unjustified in God as well as in human beings. End quote. So what is the point of these awful stories? Yes, this world which we viscerally respond to as person-like, it does abuse us sometimes, and it abuses some of us more than others. How do we today make use of those stories? The answer, I suggest, is that we are called to social justice. Last week, we talked about the work of social justice that we do. We do direct service. We attend and sometimes may lead classes to educate ourselves and others about the issues. We organize, we advocate, we witness. Last week, those in attendance were asked to write on a sticky note what they've been doing or want to do in the coming year or in any of those 5 areas of justice work: service, education, organizing, advocacy, witness. And we put those sticky notes on the map that's at the back of the room there. And if you weren't here last week, I want to invite you to peruse that display and add your own sticky note or 2 or 3. And if you were here, but you've thought of an additional area you have or would like to contribute in, then please add another sticky note to our map in the back. One way that we can relate to those old stories of an abusive God is to move ourselves out of the role of the abused partner and into a role of ministering to the abuser. The call to social justice is a call to minister to God. In that pastoral care class I mentioned, we talked about some ways to minister to victims of abuse, and we also talked about the appropriate responses for a minister when the abuser himself comes to see you or you see him. How do you minister to an abuser? Our pastoral care textbook stressed accountability, holding the abuser accountable. In our social justice work, we seek to hold accountable the sources of injustice. The appropriate frame, our textbook said, is that the abuser has committed a criminal act, and he should not be allowed to evade the consequences of this behavior. He may be asking for forgiveness, but forgiveness is not appropriate if it allows him to elude accountability for the violence and his mania for power and control. Abusive men can be truly anguished, but the reality of anguish is not always accompanied by readiness to engage with counselors or clergy to change their behavior and their assumptions. The minister's task, said our text, is to become an ally of that part of the man that gravitates toward change. An ally of that part that gravitates toward change. They will not change overnight, though they might swear that they have, but they can gravitate toward change if enough sources are making clear that they cannot get away with their old ways. And that's the take-home phrase that I offer you today. Be ye allies of the part that gravitates toward change. There's a place for us in the framework of the picture that Hosea, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah put before us. We can take on the role of ministering to the victims, yes, and of ministering to the abuser too. What would it be like to imagine ourselves as God's pastor? To imagine ministering to the world that batters its poor with starvation, disease, violence, denial of education, economic hopelessness? How do we carry out such a ministry? We minister to an abusive God as we would minister to an abusive human. We hold accountable. We avoid easy forgiveness that allows the abuse to continue. We are allies of that part that gravitates towards change. We find the thread of value there and work to weave with it a new cloth. We befriend the aspect that can transform. Ministry for justice and security means alliance with that part of reality as a whole that gravitates toward change, toward justice, toward a true and healthy love, toward freedom, the relinquishing of dominating power and control. This means standing up to Yahweh, staring him in the eye and naming his abuse, naming and confronting the hurt, facing directly the sources of power, whether they be governments or corporations or natural disasters. It won't get better if we don't hold it accountable. As a minister would say to an abusive husband, I am judging your behavior, not your humanity. So we, as befrienders of a world our souls want to treat as a person, can say, in effect, I am judging your behavior, not your divinity. I am not going to desert you, but I am not going to excuse you either. This is not betrayal. Speaking the truth is the best way I can help you. Here, then, is a new psalm, a poem, a prayer, and a promise. You are my shepherd. You provide for me in so many ways. In you I have the still waters of peace. From you, security and love, beauty and abundance. My cup truly overfloweth. You also hurt so many humans and other animals and ecosystems. There is such cruelty in you. As you are my shepherd, so I will be yours. I will stand with you, and I will not enable your harming. I will hold you accountable. I will stand with you as an ally of that in you which gravitates towards change. This change will not be easy. This change is too fundamental to be possible without anguish. Universal peace and justice will take a long time. They will not be attained in my lifetime. They will in yours. I will be with you through the lifetime available to me as you have been with me. I commit my life to that. Together, we will take the next step. I insist. Amen.
Please rise as you are able and join me in singing Rivers of Babylon, number 1042 in your teal hymnal.
please say with me our unison chalice extinguishing words on the screen. The prophet's challenge to confront harm, to respond with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. This is our resolve.
Take courage, friends. The path is often hard, the way is rarely clear. And yet take courage, for there is also this other truth. You are not alone. Go in peace.